start with making a short Mandala offering, and Geshe-la will lead away with refuge and bodhicitta. Sa shi po ki ju shi me to tam ri ram ning shi ni de gen pa di sangye shi do mi te o gi ro ku nam da shin la chu pa shoi dang
Guru Rana Mandala Gandhi Sangye Chodam Soji Chonam La Chanchu Badu Dani Kyabsun She Dagi Chushi Gibetso Nagi Drolam Benshi Sangye Drupara Sho Sangye Chodam Soji Chonam La Chanchu Badu Dani Kyabsun She Dagi Chushi Gibetso Nagi Drolam Benshi Sangye Drupara Sho Sangye Chodam Soji Chonam La Chanchu Pardu Dani Kyabsuchi
Dagi Chushi Gibetso Nagi
Kin Drolam Benshi Sangye Druparan Sho Kanki Tuzi Nizoni Tawa Tamche Pambi Chere Tambi Chun Dunze Kodam Kela Chanse Lo Good morning, everyone. Kasi na pestile. Kasi something mal log shagging sira. And that Deresha water major inji chimbilam sabda chiri namanki. Kesan dujin solat nenki ba jasi shiwala la suwan devs.
We have been looking at the phrase to the 17 Pandits of Nalanda, a text that is called Illuminating the Threefold Faith that was composed by His Holiness Dalai Lama. So we started with this text a couple of days ago on Friday, and we're going to continue today picking up from verse 7. So verse 7 is paying homage to Shantideva and saying, I call to mind the Bodhisattva Shantideva, who was skilled in teaching the host of fortunate disciples, surely marvelous path of great compassion, with the versatile means and reasons of the profound path and the vast.
어디다 야스치무 시월리기다 그 연된티 더 준주 제물이야 즉 식투바는 다 참제투야 즉 롱원이기다 메트총이 다 산지 대부침비 쭉 자와 아니 닌지 첨부 시집이 잔주성을 로존수티 아니 다 야갈 뺀도 줍는 건 아니다 원이 치스 신도 싸워디 야스치무 시월리기 숑 준주 인티차고레스 라
In paying homage here to the great Bodhisattva Shantideva and thinking of the qualities of Shantideva, if you get to read through his guide to a Bodhisattva way of life, you'll be able to really see the qualities of Shantideva, such incredible qualities, teaching the Mahayana path, particularly teaching how to develop compassion, which is the root of bodhicitta, and also teaching that. So if you read through his text, the Bodhisattva way of life, all of that will become so evidently clear to your mind.
아니 ngotser med chom da chuchi da imbares ro kansana da chi kansa suji gyulaya 아니 ninji nyamlen ti yobayna 아니 대바이나 야 년통토야 잘 대바이나 야 년통토야 자년 교토야기 탑지 여버디 ninji 더 디르와스로 더 딘지 ninji라야 아니 냠는 로종 직제 등인지 바이나 아니 자시 쳔보 시월리기 손라야 마텐 타메치 로 자가 펜두 춥등 나니 ninji단 찬주고 있으면야 아니 냠술 렌술티 자스치 무시월레기 손전주 나신지 에 대요마레스라
Here in praising Shantideva, the third line says that we praise him through teaching the truly marvelous path of great compassion. So this is an incredible path, and whoever puts it into practice, whoever is a practitioner of compassion, can not only turn others to be very close to the heart, but in a more specific way, even enemies can become very close to one's heart due to the practice of compassion. So if we put it into practice, if we train in the development of compassion, we can see how it is indispensable for our mental training. And as such, there's no other text that can rival Shantideva's Bodhisattva way of life in its way of teaching the way to develop compassion.
어디래 된서다 간지 단인지로 만주 잘이야 느실이야 아니 느시 제바이나 네버 제바이나 아니 느시 마드레지 용거리스 느실이야 아니 ninji gom바이나 아니 비기 잘라 ninji gom바이나 닌 춘드레지 로 nin라야 ninji gom는 닌 교마스 잘라야 ninji gom는 닌 춘드레 the dinji nyams lensu and sabshin giva the jasim shivali son yavanza and water measure hinji chembela sab the jachiri tsunama kezan dujin solo tenki was it moni chagoras ra that so dinji niba nibalaya injimi ta so chunjulaya sikoyaji chadshas.
If we develop compassion, particularly if we develop compassion to an enemy, to someone who is harming us, if we rather than develop compassion to a harm doer, we're gonna harm someone who is harming us, we're just gonna end up with more harm doers around us. Whereas if we develop compassion towards a harm doer, then that person can at some point become someone of your close relations. A change can occur, then becoming one of your close relations. And therefore, the way to do it is explained in a vast way, in a profound way, in his Guide to Bodhisattva way of life. And this is what His Holiness refers to here when he says, I call to mind the Bodhisattva Shantideva, who was skilled in teaching the host of fortunate disciples the truly marvelous path of great compassion with the versatile means and reasons of the profound and the vast. So this is something that really we ought to do daily. We ought to read through or think through what Shantideva taught in his Guide to Bodhisattva way of life on a daily basis.
또 체슈디 아니 다단신 냠바임바티 로 리름 디 토니다 아니 닌지 주고요서레스 다단신 냠술디야 대원 되버다 동안 문제바 아니 리죽 참을로 지규임바 디토니 아니 셴라야 동안다 전에 지마로님부터 로디 기여바 기고야지 다 리름 디 토니다 자스침부 시월리다 닌지 냠술렌소게 심마디 다진 냠비게 아니 무유네츠 디실 샤진다 송 요레스.
And particularly here when His Holiness refers to teaching the versatile means and reasons of the profound and the vast, Particularly when you look at that in relation to the practice of equalizing self with others. Equalizing self with others is the foundation for developing compassion to others. We recognize the equality of beings of the 6 realms of existence. All of them are seeking happiness and well-being, and none of them wants suffering. So through recognizing that, we develop the thought, may they be happy. And this is the basis for the development of compassion. So teaching that through the practice of equalizing, exchanging self with others, which is in line with reality, is what Shantideva teaches in his Guide to Bodhisattva of Life.
Teni dujin kamshin nidong umilam sol de unsering zun chekishin kawi jongsu jaten penzebon kenji shiwa zolo so on deus.
Next, verse 8 says, I call to mind the great Abbot Shantarakshita, who introduced the middle way to suit the disciples' mental dispositions, was well versed in expounding the rationale of the middle way and valid cognition, and disseminated the teaching of the conqueror in the land of snows.
Terdan kenji shiwa zo zawigi kenji shiwa zo ge tawadi ani oman tengiwigi tawalayata ani ne yobati tetsong ne mebachi insaris tetsong yomaris
Rangyupa.
oman tangiwi oman tangiwi yinaya ani kenji shiwa zo tat bigi dengi la sobatan teni ani tsemi korte dista so son yores ta di shishasa di oman rangiwi tawatan ani chik tsema di ani tsechen la soba di ani dosum tomo wigi ani tawa shila shachini ta lu shila shachini ani ta pyo kanjing jongla ya sangi gi chu tomo pengin gi en kenjin shiwa zo kong tu chin ta kanji dujin kamshin bigi dujin samba de tyuni ani dindi che yosaris.
So here when we call to mind the great Abbot Shantarakshita, Shantarakshita was someone who was abiding or was remaining with the view of the middle way consequence school of thought. Geshe has no doubt with respect to that. But still, when we look at the teachings of the Abbot Shantarakshita, his primary teachings were focusing on presenting the 2 truths and also the presentation of valid cognition, pramana. So his principal teachings on the 2 truths were presented from the viewpoint of the middle way autonomy school of thought, whereas the presentation of valid cognition, pramana, was based on a system that is common to both the South Tantrika, the Sutra school, and the mind-only school. So he was of the first masters that have arrived in Tibet and have disseminating the teachings of the Buddha in Tibet.
Teta hagdun da pygyun nanden ki ani tembalaya ani tsawadodi ani kenjin shiwo solaya tugdebachi ro kenjin shiwo ta gong tongbu kalaya ani chik pyo ani pyo ta takabuk sorochi kanji nambasangi wi chu tsawani ne tar manyon sajilaya ani ta gyawaramuji mambu song yoresira gong tongbu chine ani kompa pep ani kolishu kyunchini ani sangi tembati ani dida nyamdo ta leberumuchi ani chugi ani chizong denzere ani kong namba sumta ani chik tu duichine teni ani sangi tembakta ani zawa tsukba ro ani kaptu ta ani sami tsukla khanse ani tsukla khan chimbo shang dinang lola ya ta chik ani gom gyasa yogyo ani chu nyamne chesa yogyo ani so pe ta chik lejer ke da pyogi ni shibdur chen ke jansa yogyo ani loben ling se so dragul loben li samden li moyo samden li stinji kita ani lomyer kan chembu shochi tsukcheni ani sanji temba tenita dindi nang shas ro
Mio santanli di samyen samilayor.
re
Of the beings that have disseminating, spreading the teachings of the Buddha in Tibet, Shantarikshita was one of the main ones, the root one. So thinking of the historical context, he traveled from India. So Shantarikshita was an Indian master. At that point in time, Tibet was regarded as a borderland, which means that it was a land in which the Buddhist teachings have not yet spread. So Shantarikshita was traveling to Tibet at this point in time, and it was not a young master. It was already, it was in the latter part of his life. So he traveled to Tibet. He remained there for a long time. He worked really hard. And there were also other beings that were involved at the time with Buddhist activities in Tibet. So Shantarikshita was the great abbot. We have the master Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche, and also the reigning Dharma king, Chitsun Detsen. So it depends upon this combination of these three, the abbot Shantarikshita, the master Padmasambhava, and the Dharma king, Chitsun Detsen. Then Buddhism took root in Tibet. So establishing, for example, the first monastery in Tibet, Samyeling, the great gathering place, gathering hall of Samyeling, where it provided opportunity for training in meditation, for studying the Dhamma, for establishing translation teams for translating Buddhism from Sanskrit to Tibetan, being a place for teaching Sanskrit, creating an institution for learning around Samyeling, an institution called Myo Samtenling. All of these, for all of this, the Abbot Shantarikshita was pivotal in the creation of this institution and the dissemination of Buddhism in Tibet.
Tiri dijelaya ani ten kenji shon so dal homi zu ani leben kamalashila ani tsu ani pelaya dendeshi an kongita jugyong da masonata ani shuji na yores dijela ta ken leben kamalashila.
Then Shantarikshita invited one of his chief disciples, Kamalashila, to Tibet, and Kamalashila was following the footsteps of his master, also enabling kind of this protection of the Buddhism in Tibet, right? So that was Kamalashila's activities.
Terida tadir umitada shilakson gomrum doju shindu letral kanjong garden trimme sanzepa peminganzo shavla so davis.
So then in following that, we'll look at verse 9 that says, a call to mind esteemed Kamalashila, who thoroughly explained how to meditate systematically on the middle way thought free from extremes, and the union of meditative quiescence and special insight according to the sutras and tantras, and flawlessly clarified the conqueror's doctrine in the land of snows.
Tirda that so the Kamalashilagi Leben Kamalashilagi that gomrum tonda personaya and chik signi nantuvaina tenishi ni monetani sangi tembata tromebadi big tuba samba gomsum gita and song the jevi tony and nyamlen chesu titon da sangi temban zinjon pesu chesu di the Kamalashilagi zebi gomrum tonda personally at sick to go as ra ditchisivan sivuch mado ani and kenji shows of pelapel sanji tembatsu tenetaji ani the chokasa nitsu ani leventin de yon so jagarni mata kenji shows of payori ani jananitsu ani tanda jai kembo hashang singindi 아니 조 팸도스 더 아니 비기다 무요삼된리야 아니 슈니 아니 곰틱 치기어서리스 더 딘지 이토니 아니 곰티 야지 헤드 더 마선나 독자슈 레체 아니 레벤 까말라실라겠다 타치도 아니 가샤 제체니 로 가샤 제체니 아니 자이케모 하샹기 비기다 진일라메시비 따와경딩 야이케모 하샨디 아니 벽이 유일니 아니 타마 내용 땅 거야지 로 아니 rillam da rillam gtoni durni ani pamondi ani jabyugta ani karan rogores karan shorwares tu chini daikembo hashanti pöni ani neyon tamigita lorgyuti kamalashilada daikembo hashanyigi ani pigigi zolenjiyoras ani gaduk zobon di chik jetubaina ani teni shik dinta hakoya yunguyas
Kabila name said the Nobalagirbe.
pivo
Okay.
ne yongaslan ne desan pa pisha
Name said the Shesarbe.
shesa se ke mare ne sadi anzu ne dero
Ane, Kauna
yon
Sane.
sadi sig
Okay.
namran jere
So Kamalashila was the masters that taught a system of text that is called the states of meditation. So we have the initial states of meditation, the middling states of meditation, and the final states of meditation. These are three texts that were taught by Kamalashila. So then if you want to get a sense of how the Buddhist teachings are being studied and also being upheld and preserved, you can get the sense of how to do it through combining study, reflection, and meditation without these three activities being divorced from each other that act together as a way of retaining and preserving the teachings of the Buddha. So then if we think that this is what I want to do, this is what I need to do, then this is what you need to read. Kamalashila's stages of meditation, the initial, the middling, and the final stages of meditation. So Kamalashila traveled to Tibet from India. Then thinking again of this point in time in which Buddhism was still at the early stages of dissemination in Tibet, there were Indian masters that traveled from India to Tibet, but there was also a movement of Buddhism from China to Tibet. So there's one famous debate that was held at Samye that is called the Sammy Debate, where at that point in time there was a Chinese master that was residing in that in Samye, and Geshe reckons that he was probably teaching some meditation techniques. Now, part of his meditation technique was to introduce a meditation in which you take nothing whatsoever as an object of mind. So then Kamalashila was invited to Tibet from India. This Chinese master was teaching this form of meditation in which you kind of empty your mind of all thoughts, so you don't take anything as an object of mind. And Kamalashila was saying that this form of meditation is not a pure form of meditation, but there are some impurities that have kind of seeped into this process of meditation. So as a result of that, there was a debate that was established between Kamalashila and his views, the views that he brought over with him from India, and the debate partner was the Chinese master. And the agreement was that whoever wins in that debate, that form of Buddhism will be the one that will remain in Tibet. So Kamalashila won the debate, and as a result of that, the Chinese master had to leave. In that sense, you can say that he was chased away or was expelled. The form of Buddhism that then took root in Tibet was the one that was promoted by Kamalashila. So Kamalashila was claiming that this form of meditation, in which you take nothing whatsoever as an object of mind, does not withstand reasoning. It's actually a kind of harmful form of meditation in terms of kind of pursuing your goal, and therefore having stayed in Tibet, Kamalashila taught his text or his teachings, enabling us to see how to study, reflect, and meditate as a way of retaining and preserving the teachings of the Buddha.
tere da gyakembo hashangi zo garsong yorisla da konangi ani kembos da gagbe nanglo ya tsendi kembo kamalashi la rendo asti o di nanglo ya ani ji ninji ki zebe 아니 잔주 semla lo janzu jinso phajin trulaya lo janzu rambadi wombu tubugi lam nyamslens ten negab tsam pigilaya remato 아니 지 아니 태버침비기 최 양타버티 원분 눈비기 냠슬랭 거야디 아니 지일라 미치비 곰드레스 라우친다 딘디기 쇼치기 아니 캐블 땅요서리스 디 코란디 나말이야 단 티서 갸겐나 요기타 베게다 규르자기타 딘이 도스로 어 딘자 다 딘티 페르친다 만소 규마나라야 아니 다 진주다 타와드 츠마 아니 만소 규마 츠제니 다지 아니 갑둘라야 마삼 바 아니 치 대단도지 라원디게 그 양콜 믹스기 소화지 라고스라 다 딘디기 토니 슈치 캬달치 다 간지 아니 산기기 템바디 다 캔서 슈치 간지 고기 초기 지에메 다 지에 일라메진 대바이나 다 고기 초기 지에메 규 차그러 왔으라 다 되니 아니 지에 일라메진 대바이나 아니 지 유 강인버디 라드야다 메드엔 키요마로다 주 일차온디 나르기 남도 참을로 수기에지마도비 엔디기 아니 자멘 레지 자원이 메와즈 데 딜레 시치는 다 간지 추와 슈지 레바인자 아니 춤메 사원 제바스테 겨울음식 손데 강종 갸덴 춤메 산제바 페밍 안수샬로 소원데 손야디 아니 다 개첨부 슈지 로 간다지 추와 총레스 추와 가르 총요레스 강종기 아니 표 강진 중에 산지 템벌이야 추와 가르쳐레스 겐 갈때니 총레스 딘디 스테지 제바나 다 아니 까말라실레 송톤 아니 추와 중세 시트 갈때니 총레 수견체스나 야이케 뭐 하샹 토니 아니 간다간다 트루이메 또 삼 시우치 식토게지 여바인자 아니 두줄을 시고에 베키션 보레샤스로
세선들라 캠프 컴바르시에서 되고 차상기 캠보치 임베 차례 야메나 로브 야메나 로브. So Kamala Shila also got the title of Kempo from the point of view of being a scholar, a master. So again, thinking of the situation in Tibet at that point in time, this Chinese master was teaching a certain meditation practice in which you take nothing whatsoever as an object of mind. Then came along the master Kamala Shila, and he looked at what this Chinese master was promoting. So what this Chinese monk master was promoting is the following attitude or the following view. So the practice of bodhicitta, which is rooted in great compassion, also being followed by the practice of the 6 perfections, such as generosity, is a provisional meditation system. It is for those of duller faculties, of lesser faculties. Whereas for those of sharp faculties, the final mode of meditation is a meditation in which you take nothing whatsoever as an object of mind. So that was the meditation technique that this Chinese master was promoting. So then at that point in time, Buddhism was new in Tibet. There were people that came from ordinary society in Tibet, peoples that were new in their ordinations, monks and nuns. And then this system of meditation in which you sit in a certain meditation posture, you empty your mind, you kind of try to think of nothing whatsoever. Geshe-la reckons that there was some appeal to that meditation, probably seemed to be pretty special at that point in time. Whereas when you think about it, kind of this form of meditation doesn't have a lot of meaning, it doesn't really make sense. In that, first of all, it's not that you can have a consciousness that has no object whatsoever. So it's not that you drop all objects from that mind. But also, if you then simply focus on not taking anything else as an object of mind, then conceptuality at some point will still arise from that state. There would still be some conceptions that will arise after that. So remaining for some time in a state in which you take nothing whatsoever as an object of mind, does not mean to say that later on those conceptions discursive conceptions will not arise. So it's not a way of completely eliminating all of our discursive misconceptions. And therefore, when Isones here speaks of the esteemed master Kamalashila, he says, I call to mind the esteemed Kamalashila who thoroughly explained how to meditate systematically on the middle way, thought free from extremes, and the union of meditative quiescence and special insight according to the sutras and tantras, and flawlessly clarify the conqueror's doctrine. So flawlessly here is understood in a particular way. He taught it without mistakes, particularly when you juxtapose what Kamalashila was doing at that point in time. Then there was this system of meditation that was taking off, that was the one that was promoted by that Chinese master, in which the practice of compassion, bodhicitta, the sixth perfection, and so forth were regarded as just provisional temporary means, whereas the final mode of meditation would be just to think of nothing or to take nothing whatsoever as an object of mind. So in that sense, Kamalashila flawlessly clarified the conqueror's doctrine in the land of snows, in Tibet.
어디에서 디다 원이 비다 곰라야 메버용이 다 곰게래 가부용이 지면나 네버드 데벤 카말라실라기 제비 곰룸 통다 파르스마야 아니 장고야디 신도는 계신보 라 텔라 장바이나 티칭 제토바나 아니 곰 야규 위쳐디야 아니 라야 여바 아니 곰 갭시바 곰 갭니 So
then if you like to meditate, if you have an affinity with meditation, if you hold that in high esteem, this is what you need to study. You need to study Kamalashila's earlier stages of meditation, or initial stages of meditation, the middling stages of meditation, and the final stages of meditation. This is really important. And when you study that, you find that, first of all, you'll have things to meditate on, and you will also know how to meditate on them so that your meditation will bear fruit.
Jambi Jason Tijan de Nukon, Labor Bank, Jajan Lamdenshi, Gavin Longian, Namrishin Diso. Jenze Tomeshalo, so there's that number in the chamber, Nison there, any power tome, any Levin power tome di, any Jizun Chambongombo, that she looked Jungi but the Drupche, any Tama, any Jizun Chambongombi shall see, any Jis Sonchin, any Tavachim with the new Kulaya level lavage, so di, any Jizun Chambongombo Rangison, that Tenjong on the 당이 로르기도 미시다 녜삼나 아니 지준 잠번 공부 아니 간덴라야 슈요레스 다 파워 토메기 지준 잠번 공부 드르치 지준 잠번 공부 샤시니 아니 텐중온도 쟁그 쯧비 따지 아니 도데겐로서 디디 센니 따지 미율라 츠 지준 잠번 공부 손 텐중온도 쟁 페베디 소지디 아니 파워 토메기 couldn't then chong yosari some good those the dingara samji is
something so do the Ganden at the shoe, and it is Junction Dinga the Chambagomone.
Chamagom sonrova.
Oh,
that the mule lera.
Oh,
Mule pep to ya garden to the power tomegi, Jun Chamagom drew, Jun Chamagom sharing was sick. Chese tenitsu
in a
mengade
in a day drum did Nangun down
Jemason, not the Chinese, yes, some says.
Then next it says, I call to mind the esteemed Asanga, whom Maitreya inspired and looked after, who was adept in disseminating all the Mahayana sets of discourses, who revealed the vast path and, as prophesied, blazed the trail of the mind-only system. So the last line refers to Asanga as being the one who blazed the trail of the mind-only system. In fact, looking at the Indian masters that arose throughout the years or the centuries, there were two that were called trailblazers. One of them was a Sangha. So it was said in the stories of Asanga that he practiced for 12 years in order to come to see Maitreya face to face, the Venerable Maitreya face to face. So he attempted to do that for 12 years. Then at the end of his practice, he did meet Maitreya face to face, and Maitreya was residing in Tushita. So Asanga received teachings from Maitreya, teachings on the ornament for clear realization and such, right? So the ornament of clear realization, the ornament to the Mahayana sutras and so forth. They received teachings on that were later on collected in 5 texts, which are called the 5 Dhammas of Maitreya, and then brought them with him back to this land of, you can say, the land of human beings, to the land of people. So Geshe reckons that this is what the story tells. Geshe hasn't said that story in writing, but he reckons that this is more or less what the story says, right? So he received those teachings from Maitreya and then brought them back with him.
dan pabo tome and chitan gavi long dimbiita ani shindi sonje gomullo dan pabo tome niga dichagores gawarangita long koran no ya da dingan shumugoji deni da so garchi onsla diga zu ani namrigbi bena semzambi tadrubti ani so tenging zu di ani pabo tome dichagdo asra da semzambi tawa di 타랑기 엄마랑기보다 엄마랑기비기 따와 때는 배발이야 아니 샘잠비기 따와디 슈지 펜도요 되와 엄마랑기비 따와디 엄마 탄기비 따와기다 내가 수त्य야기 다 아니 고다마스는 따랑기비기다 아니 따르티 차고서레스 진짜 딘지 톤다 내가 텔레시니 아니 샘잠비기 샘잠다 남리비기 신디소 아니 주 설때나샤스 라
And when the text refers to Asanga as being the one who blazed the trail of the mind-only system, so there were 2 trailblazers, right? One of them was Arya Sangha, the second one was the protector Nagarjuna. But here when it says that Asanga blazed the trail, the path. He blazed the trail of the mind-only system, the Vidyavadins, the Chittamatra school of thought, which is so helpful in terms of taking the initial step for developing the understanding of what the 2 middle way school systems promote, right? So the middle way autonomy school, the Madhyamika Svatandrika school of thought, and the Madhyamika Prasanka school of thought. If we are to develop a precise or detailed understanding of the view of the middle way consequence school of thought, then the initial step that we take for understanding what they say is through looking at what the mind-only school system says. This is so helpful for developing an understanding of the Madhyamika thought, and particularly the Madhyamika Prasanka thought.
ngombokundu pabo tomeg zebi ngombokundu odusu laya ani sejene ani bi dachi namrik court number bi court the shibi court ani never do that zolaya tengoyachi ngombokon la teni beno lebe inyan da ani pabo tomegi the shong la teni ani sem shongki namja chemachi 신고나 종 도졸이야 마덴 타메치 로 남비 쇼는 조 딩이 쇼는 마덴 타메치 아니 차디여 버치 어 딘디지레도 아스라.
So then of the systems promoted by a Sangha, we have the Abhidhamma Samuchaya, the higher Abhidhamma, in which a Sangha focused on the presentation of consciousness. So if you want to understand what cognition is, if we want to understand what consciousness is, then this is also something that is important to study. So we have 2 systems of Abhidhamma, the system of Abhidhamma of Vasubandhu and the system of Abhidhamma of Asanga. So if we are to develop a good understanding of minds and mental factors, then this is what we have to rely upon, those two systems of Abhidhamma. So here, when we look at the system of Abhidhamma set forward by Asanga, it is in line with the view of the Vidyavadins, the Chittamatra school of thought.
데리다 대산 겨울음지기 순거다 남비기 추 남비 체릭스 남비 따두스 다 남비 체릭스 데서데 조 샘거드렌도 샘샘종 거드 진짜 샘샘종 데다 남비기 추 냠술랭이질이야 신도네 아니 갱간체 부디 아니 샘그 남자들이스 다 딘지 샘그 남자디 아니 파보토메다 아니 레베 이닝기 쇼나 때문에 신고야지 간지 넘버 상기비 세리다 대산 쉬우치 비게라야 아니 치 케바남 아니 이온 트럭데사디 소디 간이 총두슬란디 파워토메다 레베 이닝키 뭐뭐 젤소벌 때니 다 총여바디 베스 아니 시우레스라
His honest at this point in time is also emphasizing the approach to Buddhism in studying Buddhism as a form of in a scientific approach, right? So he speaks about Buddhist science, of the presentation of how things exist at the very basis. So particularly when we think of minds and mental factors, which you can say is part of this subject of Buddhist science, the presentation of minds and mental factors. And particularly this underpins our practice as Buddhists. So this is so vital for us to understand the mind. And we do so on the basis of the writings of Vasubandhu and Asanga. So particularly at this point in time when the academia looks at this point of writings that explains the operation of minds or consciousness and also mental factors, many of them find it to be inspiring, to be appealing. And this is also for us, as we said, as Buddhist practitioners, to understand the mind, we need to look at the system of Abhidhamma, Abhidhamma Kosha, and so forth.
데르드니 춘은 데든 니동 소소니 젠도 나우리 좀더 센제버 군진이버 잡은 키비촉 레베 이니셜로 소반데스.
So with that in mind, we look at the next verse, number 11. I call to mind the esteemed Acharya Vasubandhu, who by maintaining the doubly empty system of the 7 treatises of Abhidhamma, clarified the philosophical theories of the Vaibhashikas, Sautantrikas, and Vijnavadas. The foremost sage renowned as a second omniscient one.
데르다 자오름지기 레베 이니엘야 체드 나온디 군진이버 잡았어. 아니 나는들이야 다 군진이바 군진 당부디 넘버 좀 된 데라왔어 다 군진이바 배 아니 쉬우지기 개바치 뭐지 아니 개비 촉레스 그러 야원지 제대 나디 개비 촉 송도 왔어 야원지 까고라야 저걸 송디 비다 아 리르라 소바디 몸베 저거 나라야 송데디 아니 레베니 딩무도스 라다 But song was that did that keep namjusing the ko yimba mumba. Any turn to yadi any keeping namjurian was that
Imba.
Love to each other. Only keep a shoes, living in keep a shoes. In a come galeo norsa in Yungores.
So this verse says, it refers to Acharya Vasubandhu, right? So we're following up from the verse dealing with Asanga. So after Asanga, we speak of Vasubandhu, who was responsible for the treatises of the Abhidhamma, clarifying the philosophical theories of the Vaibhashikas, Sautantrikas, and Vijnavadas. So before I said Vidyavadas, actually it's Vijnavadas. The foremost sage renowned as the second omniscient one. So here it refers to Vasubandhu as being the second omniscient person. The first one, of course, is the Buddha, the Bhagavan. Here His Holiness refers to Vasubandhu as being the second one. So particularly when we look at the writings of Vasubandhu, we can see the great scholastic quality of Vasubandhu, but also Isonis says with respect to the writings of Vasubandhu, who is a great scholar, that in his writings of the Abhidhamma, you also find a description of the of cosmology, like for example, Mount Meru and the 4 continents and so forth. And these teachings of his Isonis says are not teachings that you need to take as being true or real, in the sense that we do not see the existence of this universe or this cosmology in that way. So this is also an approach of a learned person to state things as they are, or if they are not, so presenting something that exists in a particular way to exist in that particular way. If it doesn't exist in that particular way, then also presenting it as not existing in that way, right? This is the quality of a scholar.
데르다 아니 조 레벨 인인게다 숑 아니 개체슈디 아 몸은 적 돌야 다 공기다 아니 고제난기다 지지체슈디 다 몸은 저드레스 라 몸은 적기 잔진이요 다 자와당 란데 자와 지지체 돈이 디기만 데시 츠르 돈다 닐레베니 코랑 송샤 저란데세치 디 니 잔데 단 지 세투바나 테니시 니 달레베 인닝기 아니 그 용된 통투야치 로 상든도 지 아니 네가발라 소버도서 시비자와 타기 투스라라 더 시비 아니 콜비자와디 간진 되자세다 때문에 소바 아니 디기들 된다 총줄도 다 작부 쉬우진 송여로 왔어
Or maybe another way of stating that, when you look at the writings of such masters, and then as Zona says, some of the teachings that you find in his teachings, such as the presentation of the universe or cosmology, you can see that this is not real, right? So a mark of a true scholar or real scholar would be being able to make a distinction between what is real and what is not real, what is true, what is not true. Anyway, the most important thing here is when we look at the writings of Vasubandhu, his most important writings were the root texts of the Abhidhamma and the auto-commentary that he composed on that basis. So if we can study that, we can come to see the physical qualities that Vasubandhu had. Particularly when you look at the 5th chapter from his Abhidhamma Kosha, when you look at the root text and the auto-commentary, you will study a very detailed presentation of the root of cyclic existence, the origination of cyclic existence from afflictive states of mind, anger, attachment, ignorance, and such.
Tension semi goya lecture namjulo min jensen sema chogi lambishal da leben chongla.
Then verse 12 says, a call to mind esteemed Dignaga, the logician who gave us the discerning eye of the fine discrimination by thoroughly opening 100 epistemological doors to reveal the system of the Buddhist scriptures through the power of natural logic.
대달로면 총랑기다 아니 산지 템벌이야 아니 자월랍신 시우치 제야디 무도 지리비 토니 아니 산지 좀 된디기다 숑루키 텐텐라 파바티 베 고다마스는 칭인디 아니 레벤 총랑리스 레벤 총랑.
Now the master Dignaga provided us with such a powerful system of accessing the teachings of the Buddha through reasoning that are factual reasoning, through the power of the fact. The first one to do so, to provide this approach of accessing the Buddha's teachings with this reasoning, which are factual reasoning, was Dignaga.
Gumbulu dan ani Aryan Deva Sanji Kyang Pandan Dawa Travel Sobi Shon Angloya Pigi Samutombanyi ten la Pondi ani Riba Jata Goni ten la Pabi Yorda in ya Chick Shon Kong Kun ani Trimda Shig Nedunti Mutu repeat on the part Tuni Benatachi ani Tawa the Tamji Kimbi Lam Kusugu Rimbadi mixing Dengindi ani Levin Chogi Lambo Yapsi need redos.
And indeed, when you look at the approach that is taken to the reasoning that we develop with respect to the profound emptiness, as explained by the protected Nagarjuna, by Aryadeva, by Buddha Palita, by Chandakirti, they presented, you can say, hundredfolds of reasonings in order to realize the profound emptiness. But really, when you look at our ability to move through the four tenets, the four schools of thought, and end up in the state of liberation and the state of omniscience through utilizing reasoning, which is based on facts or based on what is real, that is initially provided to us by Dignaga and his two chief disciples.
Tatsu Tsema Kundula Soba, Tsema Kundula Soba Sydney, and Tsemi Shonlaya, Tusum Chetuana, and she need the Chogi Lambugi, and Kosuntuki Yondenjia, and Guardian Tianch, one the Tanig Sanji Temple, Missigi, and Zeji Labuch Shadow Samsonji, you the same thing, Shini Tabatobaji, Yunguris.
So I should have said Dignaga and his disciple, not two chief disciples, but Dignaga and his disciple. Anyway, here, as we're looking at the writings of Dignaga, the master Dignaga, his chief writing is on the system of pramana, valid cognition. So if you study this system in great details, you will come to see the qualities of body, speech, and mind that Dignaga possessed. And you will then also develop a deep appreciation to his kindness, which means that on that basis, you will develop an informed faith.
Chinan Semi Negun Legonshi, Dosum Savgi Lamku Ringlamni, Neither Mejon Chutsun Den Kibi, Chugitabi Shala Sondes, Pandichera.
So that leads us to verse 13, which is paying homage to Dharmakirti. I call to mind the esteemed Dharmakirti, who fattened the vital points of Buddhist and other system of knowledge, granting conviction in the vast and profound paths of the Sautrantika and Chittamatra, and who was adept in expounding the marvelous ways of the Dharma.
Tilda Trimtachinang Sami, that Semi Namsha Jotangi, and Nenga Samalo, and Korang Sichi, can't be any. That Ribi Lamni be the Niba Metujon, Dun Candy, Pandichadares. Hardun to that Bena Dinshi Netsul George. Semming Neba Nivalaya, Dinshi Nilu Semming Neba Nivalaya, Dinshi and Ribi Lamni, Dinshi Tela Pavati, and Pandichadakish, and it song, and Samanamjing, the Levin Niba. Nanshinji, the Yomar Songodas or Dindi Zeshas.
So Dharmakirti was the one who saw the vital points, the essential points in the presentation of validity in Buddhist schools of thought and in non-Buddhist schools of thought. And he was able to make his way through them through presenting an amazing path of reasoning for synthesizing or analyzing those different views. And particularly when you look at the textual tradition that he created on that basis, when you look at the Pramana Bhartika, the second chapter of the text, you can encounter the development of valid cognition that develops an ascertainment with respect to the four truths. So such a detailed presentation of how to develop a realization with valid cognition, done by valid cognition of the Four Truths, was explained in such great details in the second chapter of this text, so that it seems that in no other text it was explained to that degree. This is in the writings of Dharmakirti.
Terita kanji pandit choda ki seman namja nangla ya zu di ngazata namba sanji wi chu nyams lengen jila ya ani ngebar do ta ngeba ni ko ya di ani lendre re ani kewang hashi re demba shela soba di dire da ta di riglam gtoni ma ani drum tenla phangen di ani pandit chu ji tawa zu chagos ro.
So then particularly for us as Buddhists, well, we do need to develop conviction. Conviction is in basing ourselves on the system of Pramanavartika wrote by Dharmakirti. We do need to find certain topics such as karma, actions and the result, past and future life, the Four Truths. So a rational approach to the investigation of these topics and finding conviction in those topics was explained by Dharmakirti.
Banduchu Yitavida, Semanamden Tatsures, Semanamden Lea, Lewishiorita, Randung Levedan, Shendung Lewis, Randung Lew Tambuni, the Randung Lewis, Rangi P. Tachi, Riglam Gutoni. Chulaya Dondochia, two D, and Tensicton, Tenla Pavadi, and the Levitambo so chagdos, Levitambo Gitachi, and the Tensic number soon the soba, Tana sum the Yanda sum Kita, Tensic, and the mother of two storage that Dom Tires, T Tonita, Riglam Laya Lapsu. Teni Riglam di Kene, and Lendradan, Kiawangashi. Denshi tenla pabadi ani leviniba kanji rangi shajangi bi tablaya ro deningi bi tabsanandra tendamngi bi tabsanandra di denya di lev thambuni telaya ani randing levels ta shen jesu zim bi tablaya ani lev sumba de shiva zu lev shivi kalaya junga shen ani drubje to bi tablaya junga ko chini ani shen jesu ziya oda di Now
the main text that Dharmakirti was responsible for is the Pramanavartika, the companion to valid cognition. Now, this text consists of 4 chapters. The first 2 chapters are for one's own welfare. The last 2 chapters are for the welfare of others. So the first 2 chapters in the Pramanavartika are teaching us how to develop a rational approach. So to begin with, the first chapter explains the way to develop the path of reasoning through looking at how to construct syllogisms, how to construct syllogism in which the reasons are correct, right? So there are 3 types of syllogisms in which the reasons are the reason is a correct reason, and also teaching what a pseudo reason is. So this is what you find in the first chapter of the Pramanavartika. Now in the second chapter of the Pramanavartika, again, we're still looking at the section of the text which was taught for one's own welfare. So in the second chapter of the text, we are taught how to use this path of reasoning through constructing correct syllogisms, correct reasons, in order to develop an understanding of topics such as karma and past and future lives and such, but also how to use them in relation to objects of knowledge, the 2 truths, ultimate truths, and such. So that was taught in the first 2 chapters of the text. Now the second 2 chapters of the text, or kind of the final 2 chapters, are teachings for the benefit of others. So for example, in the 4th chapter of the Pramanavartika, he's teaching, Dhammakirti was teaching establishing speech, or maybe another way of calling that is proof statements, how to use proof statements for the benefit of others. 4th. The 3rd, no, Geshe hasn't mentioned anything with respect to the 3rd. Let's dila sumba dila
ngonsum leo
ngusum leo.
ngonsum leo tengora.
In the 3rd chapter of the Pramanavartika, there's a presentation of perception.
Terda deni baba tome kuchin leon sheshin tu yemen tadr umi soshin tu jinji jondu na tum power tradition lo so and there's
Moving on to verse 14, I call to mind the esteemed Vimuktitsena, who lit the lamp illuminating the meaning of the ornament of clear realization, in accordance with the middle way system free from the extremes of existence and non-existence. The meaning of perfection of wisdom as it came from the Asanga brothers.
that dini that chokchi la yongor genji shondun na mi remember power tradition lo so and yundin jela gawi longden to mabongo me menga ji yunsum sheshin shonjus leben singe sambo so and the power tradition leben singe sambo ni ta karnan gore slaundi ani sangi gi ani chela ya sabji gi chuni sami chok dambachi da ani gyachevi chok dambachi ni tenza ani shindi so chengele ya kangsala ya ni tenju la ya ni shagores shindi so chig tenju shindi so chig tenju slaundi ani sami chola ya zu umatsawa sherores gyachevi chola ya shondi jizun chambi zebi tenju ngondo kendres tadi ani chambi gi ani tome kuching gyuni ma pebanza ti ani the genji shondun na dramis ani gendi tenjong ngondo genla ya kogo ti be shondun de be dramet ta bengi ge ani kewchi surse de power trodi ro power trodi res
Tome kumche se di Papa Tortella lagi
mari tome kushin di dera
Di
power tome
Indian?
da ini
Indian. Cizan inchiketo la kumche se di la manzek de jasha di
kuche se de
kumche. Di la kumche chik lagi ya mana kumche kashi.
kuche se di pingeni
Jere. Cizan Papa Tome la pinga nier me ya mana
koran lebe ini de kuni
koni. Actually, when we look at verse 14, it should be read together with verse 15 because we bring the two of Vimuktitsena and Haribhadra together in looking at what both of them did. So let's read through both of them. Again, looking at verse 14. I call to mind the esteemed Vimuktitsena, who lit the lamp illuminating the meaning of the ornament of clear realization. In accordance with the middle way system, free from the extremes of existence and non-existence, the meaning of the perfection of wisdom as it came from the Asanga brothers. Now here it should be, brothers should be read in singular rather than plural. So it is said that Vasubandhu was Asanga's brother. In that sense, Vimuktitsena clarified the meaning of the perfection of wisdom as it came from Asanga and his brother Vasubandhu. I came to then the next verse 15 says, a call to mind esteemed Haribhadra clarified the three mothers, the supreme perfection of the wisdom scriptures, the supreme perfection of wisdom scriptures, sorry, in line with Maitreya's fifth instructions and who the conqueror prophesies would expand the meaning of the mother. So here we have two masters which are linked together, Vimuktitsena and Haribhadra. Now, in order to look at what they did or their areas of expertise, we can go back to the teachings that the Buddha gave. So the teachings of the Buddha gave can be classified into two aspects. So the teachings on the path of the profound, and teachings on the vast and extensive conduct. Now, since there are those two streams, the vast and the profound, we also have two trailblazers in relation to them. So the protector Nagarjuna is connected with the stairs of the path of the profound. His chief text is the fundamental treatise on the middle way called Wisdom. And then we have the second trailblazer is Asanga, who was mainly responsible for promoting the teachings on the vast and extensive conduct. So he, as we said, received teachings from Maitreya on the 5 Dhammas of Maitreya, and of them, the chief one is the ornament for clear realization. So the ornament for clear realization is the text expounding the stages of the vast and extensive conduct. So looking at verse 14, it says, I call to mind esteemed Vimuktitsena, who lit the lamp illuminating the meaning of the ornament. Here it refers to the ornament of clear realization brought by Asanga, explaining the states of the vast and extensive conduct.
lamlaya lovyalaya ani jizun chambong gumbi song tenjong ondo jenlaya ta madu tameres ro yum gendu du song ki nguden tongni yirimba ta bedung ngombo to berimba nyibe nani bedung ngombo to berimba di sawa chinging tenju di an tenjong ondo jen chagores ta delaya maduran ta digi ani ten chima cheje ta jikpe ani domenaji sawa chinging ki ani 제단 자갈기 파비기다 아니 케보 망부여서리스 이네 디낭기다 직 아니 쪼디 아니 레벤 파버 트레데다 레벤 싱게 상분이 아니 단 남기도 단 제온디 디낭기다 직 제와 텐중온도 쟁기 아니 제와 치 신도 사와디 아니 레벤 싱게 상분 제비 아니 제와 텐서디 chagores ta di yobadi yawtsunga bi leshi senjin la ya chi jeto ba na ani kento gres ro.
So the stages of the extensive path were taught in the ornament for clear realization, which was given by Maitreya. Now it says here in the verse, let's look at the verse again, verse 14. He taught it in accordance with the middle way system, free from extremes of existence and non-existence, the meaning of the perfection of wisdom as it came from the Asanga and his brother, right? Asanga and Vasubandhu. So the meaning of the perfection of wisdom, the perfection of wisdom sutras are called the Madhas. So we have the extensive, the middling, and the abridged Madha sutras, the sutras explaining the perfection of wisdom. Now those sutras teach explicitly the meaning of emptiness, the profound, but are also hidden meanings, teachings that are presented in a hidden manner by the Madha Sutras. So clarifying the teachings that were taught in the hidden manner was done in the ornament for clear realization, the Abhisamalamkara. So if we want to develop a clear understanding of those teachings on the status of the vast and extensive conduct that were taught in a hidden manner in the Madha Sutras, we have to rely upon the Abhisamalamkara, the ornament for clear realization. So we have this text that was given by Maitreya. It was brought to us by Asanga. And then there were a few Indian masters, even Indian scholars, that composed commentaries explaining the meaning of the ornament for clear realization. But of these few scholars, the two chief ones were Vimuktitsena and Haribhadra. Particularly when we move on to the next verse, 15, Haribhaja was the one who was composed the most extensive and clearest commentary to the ornament for clear realization is in lamp illuminating, or illuminating the meaning. Dunsel, Dunsel, clear meaning. Yeah, in his commentary of the clear meaning of the ornament for clear realization. So this is the chief text that we use in order to discern the meaning of the Abhisamadhyamkara. But on top of that, if you can look at the golden rosary of excellent explanation that was taught by Lama Tsongkhapa, then you can really develop a precise understanding of the system of the Abhisamadhyamkara.
다 산지 좀 된디게 비게 다 취려야 아니 조 라버스므로 와서 다 주름게 라비 코트 두비 코트 아니 레비 연대외다 샤게외 콘남바니 차고레스 다 디레스로 도원 범디 gond은 레드네 탐지 유미 로지 소소타르 마놀렘드 땡기 초기바 연대외 지샬라 소한테 탑수 연대 노빈 졸라왕 드덴티메린 드페빌레 gerçeği jondönlerden dünzi çok şage ve gişalı soğan devs.
So next we have two verses which cover another areas taken from the Buddhist teaching. So of the three trainings, the first training is training in ethical discipline, or a more specific way, the system of the Vinaya. So the system of the Vinaya teaches us how to train in ethical discipline. So there were two masters that were responsible for explaining the system of ethics, the training in ethical discipline based on the Vinaya. Those two masters are Shakyaprabha and Gunaprabha, those two Indian masters. So the next two verses pay homage to them. I call to mind the esteemed Gunaprabha, excelling in stability and learning, who integrated the intentions of 100,000 categories of Vinaya, and in accordance with the Mula Savastivadin system, thoroughly and unmistakably explained individual liberation, or pratimoksha. Next, I call to mind esteemed Shakyaprabha, the ideal Vinaya holder, master of the treasure of the three precepts qualities, who, in order to ensure the longevity of the flawless Vinaya teachings, thoroughly explained what the vast scriptures meant.
단 디비션라야 라바야 디비션라야 라바야기다 숑 초드교바디 안 자비기 도요르와 산지점데니 이나야 디 간수 갑투레지 제바야나 지 수dom게 투야로지 메바인자 다디 수dom게는 시 차데야디 아니 레빈연데기다 도원도 자와티 다 슈저스다 디기바다 지 가서 공정 소도디 아니 도와자 센트를 소바다 샤게외 제비 두솔라 시그니다 아니 디비션라야 아니 지 퇴송로니 오네기 지 징인지만 존 도솔라 따고야지 그런 드윙아다디다 콘남바니다 조레스로.
So we have the Vinaya system, which is, of course, based in sutras. So if you read through the sutras explaining the Vinaya system, it is hard to understand the extent of them, and then to kind of reach, it's hard for us to reach this conclusive resolution of the points explaining that system. The one that provides us with the ability to do that is Gunaprabha, that composed this summary, a summation of this Vinaya system. So we have the root text composed by Gunaprabha, and later on we have Shakyaprabha that composed an explanation of this Vinaya system. So this is what we need to study, the root texts and the commentaries, the texts of Gunaprabha and Shakyaprabha, in order to develop an understanding of the points that were determined by these two masters.
dini ta nanendragi ta lebeng ta peshe ta tamak soroji ta peshe menros tangi lorgyu de shere shingme dina ani choji pande adishag ta choji pande adishag ta ani khond mebe ta ani zu lebeng ta 아니 주룩 제샤비기 아니 산기기 땜바티 수dom겸 아니 기우숨기 아니 람냠슬렌수 그름비 톨이야 자니 다 찬주 람든 제로스 dom겸 다라 안줄렌 초초 다 두삼로 아니 소소소 샤샤바는다 아니 당원이 맨남주 여행이지기 참을 로존치도 렌투를 마도 아니 간주 도지기 레로 사오지만다 아니 무슨 나올이야 제가 따투에 다 영어 말았어 진짜 다 디즈 참을 로기지 맹아 담아준 수라야 기체도 아니 조지 반대 아티샤 페우치니 dom겨였어리스 잔줄람된 톨이야.
So of the 17 Pandits of Nalanda, finally we get to Atisha. So Geshe is not very skilled in the historical narratives, but it is likely that Atisha was the last of those 17 Nalanda Masters in terms of history. But anyway, we have briefly spoken of the 16 masters before Atisha. So what Atisha did was to take all the teachings that were given by the Buddha and those masters, combining them into a unified system of the steps of the path of enlightenment, explaining the steps of the path of beings of the three scopes. So he composed the text, The Lamp for the Path of Enlightenment, explaining the steps of the path, which is a system particularly for us, or you can say that for people that are lazy, they cannot spend even half of their lifetime training in the Buddhist system, in studying extensively the systems of those great Indian masters. Atisha came along and presented for us a unified system that made it easier to extract the key points of all those great teachings. So,
로메.
okay.
로선 특송 삽기 가수 마루파 개우숨기 람든 domzete 간종 투덴 베베 튼진지 조 아드샬라 소안데스.
And it reads, a call to mind Joe Atisha, the kind Lord who caused the conqueror's teachings to flourish in the land of snows, who expounded in the paths of the three individuals the doctrines of the vast and profound that are the complete trainings of the conqueror.
That penruchu dindi dindiji chendos that do stick ani nalandagi kepi ombo ani penruchu dingi namthar kosontugi yonde ani leven rangi ani tembaliya chik chawachitsulti chik simbayina ani lobjong chedan chansang chik ta sinsarwasro pena umishong de kichi inza umishong jambalaya ani leven lu tsubi leven papa yapsinga ta shonlaya zu lawyachik teni daji ani ta truwa sevala soba ani ben kenji shiwa tsodan ani kamala shila ani chik ngombi shonlaya ani tome kuchingi shong deni tsemi shong dilaya ani cholan choda yapsiki shong teni ani shishi ngondo jegi shonlaya ani papa tode da lebe singi sambi shong ani dubi shonlaya yonten wade shagye wegi shongle ten du chik diwanda ngone chanzang nyamslen tuyachik chanzang shi tuyachik da du dom gyawandi dom gyawdandi keusum lam tolaya so dom gyawdandi ani choji pande adishag lamden anshagyo du chik drobaina da yakbu shochik ro.
So we went over the 17 Pandits of Nalanda, ending up with Atisha. Verse 18 says, a call to mind Joe Atisha, the kind Lord who calls the conqueror's teachings to flourish in the land of snows. I read through that already, right? So, all right, so I read through that. So we went through those 17 masters of Nalanda. So when you think of scholars that have arose throughout the passage of time, these are the masters of scholars of the teachings of the Buddha. And then if you develop the knowledge of the biography of those masters, the qualities of body, speech, and mind, how they've acted for the sake of the teachings of the Buddha, it would have meant that you have a complete or thorough study of the teachings of the Buddha. So thinking, for example, of the 5 classics, the 5 great systems. So we have the system of the middle way, 5 masters connected with that system. So we have Nagarjuna and Buddhapalita and Aryadeva, Chandakirti, Baba Viveka, right? Those 5 masters. Then we have those masters that have helped with the dissemination of Buddhism in Tibet, Shantarakshita and Kamalashila. We have those masters that were responsible for the Abhidhamma system, Asanga and Vasubandhu. We have those masters which are connected with the development of valid cognition or logic in general, Dignaga and Dharmakirti. We have those 2 chief masters connected with the system of the perfection, which are Haribhadra and Vimuktitsena, and 2 masters which are connected with the system of Vinaya, so Shakaprabha and Gunaprabha. So understanding all of them then means that you'll be able to put, understanding all of them or knowing all of them, including the teachings that they gave and the qualities of body, speech, and mind, have they acted for the sake of the teachings, would then provide oneself with an ability to practice it in a complete sense, the teachings of the Buddha. So then came along a Sangha and took all those teachings from those previous masters. Atisha, sorry, what did I say? Okay, then came Atisha that took those teachings from all those previous masters and combined them together into his presentation of the states of the path of enlightenment, teaching the states of the path of beings from the 3 scopes presented in his text, The Lamp for the Path of Enlightenment.
데리다 아니 타마들이야 제르무치기 남들은 돌디와 테러다 담부 자신 되바 마음도 송대야디 담부 자신 되바 마음도 자치비 쇼조디 아니 펜루추된 거 쇼드레도 왔어 펜루추된 거쇼 파르드 쇼는 탐제 담바샤리세 든 타만 인생권은 냠스네 아니 konje 담바 기비 체동 송디 아니 딘디기 쇼 찬상이야 시치니 아니 디페 아니 참마 담가 아니 차퉁이 담가도 차왔자마세 domgyaptunginji pyo kanjin jongla yata ani jerumuchita ani kibi yanze sumbachi ta gyasi gyadam pyo ta donga ki shon chanza umi chola ya ta vile shi chimonga ani nga gi chola ya ta sandi jiksum tsubi ani bi ta gyazog lam nyamna chanza jikson yoras ani gyasi lam girimba ngondo jengita 아니 제와들이야 야가르 키비기 제와 만들어 저 뉴스삭직 개치야지 간디 뉴스삭직 세지 송걸 또 참말로 세진 dom견 아니 레시 센딩다 페니치 다이어와스 디레스 라
And also in summary, when we look at one of the verses that Lama Tsongkhapa composed, in saying, first of all, I sought extensive study, and in the middle, all those systems dawned to my mind as instructions for practice, and at the end, I put an effort in my practice day and night. In offering, you can say, a service to the teachings of the Buddha. So then, when we think of what Lama Tsongkhapa said, first of all, having studied extensively the teachings of the 17 Pandits of Nalanda, having studied them in that extensive way in which they dawn to his mind as instructions for practice. So really, when we look at Lama Tsongkhapa, who was such an incredible master of both Sutra and Tantra, composing a varieties of texts, like for example, composing 5 texts on the philosophical view. Texts such, for example, the 2 extents of the Special Insights section, commentaries to Chandakirti and Nagarjuna's writings, but also composing an explanation of the steps of the tantric path in his great exposition of the steps of the tantric path, particularly giving an extensive explanation of both the generation and the completion stages. Also, another text that Lama Tsongkhapa composed was bringing together the views that were presented by 21 major commentaries, main commentaries to the Abhisamayalankara. So bringing together those commentaries, analyzing them, synthesizing those different commentaries and coming down with conclusion was done in his Golden Rosary of Excellent Explanation. And finally, as we've completed looking at going through the 17 Pandits of Nalanda, His Holiness finally also make some aspirational prayer verses. So Geshe will read through them and then we will read through them.
신다 치미 종구 텐노라 төсөнгөмбе пару чимбатан доржи теби самне ламкон нгеба делани бар чингила кешен кевар хавсум дембитен летып шедан джиби лондотен зинжемпела 신다 ченнонтан 총버텐라 자와 чебаршо düdi kundu төсüm шеду ки чави тюнда лоцо 용방비 담비 케드르 рав든 페와이 замли 사젠타든 제규르치 텐딘 동안 용조 상놈드 May
Making such invocations with an unflinchingly pure mind to these exceedingly fine sages who are the ornaments for the world and the source of stupendous, elegant teachings, might be blessed that I may mature in my mind stream and achieve liberation. By understanding the meaning of the two truths, the way things exist, we ascertain through the four truths how we arrive in and how we live the cycle of existence. Engendered by valid cognition, our faith in the three refuges will be firm. May I be blessed to establish the root of the path to liberation. May I be blessed to perfect an uncontrived awakening mind of bodhicitta, which is rooted in renunciation, the aspiration for liberation, and a total purification of sufferings and its source, and that boundless compassion that wishes to protect wandering beings. May I be blessed to be able to develop quick and easy conviction about the profound parts of all the parts of the perfection of wisdom in the Vajrayana, by listening to, contemplating, and meditating on the meaning of the commentaries of the great pioneers. May I, in life after life, obtain the good basis of a human life, possessing the three precepts, and contribute to the doctrine as the great pioneers did, with respect to upholding and propagating the words and insights of the teaching through explanation and practice. May all religious assemblies be filled with noble sages and practitioners, passing their times in hearing, contemplating, and explanation, and having totally given up wrong livelihood, may the ground of this great world be adorned in this way. By such power, may all the grounds and parts of the sutras and tantra be traversed, and by quickly achieving the state of an omniscient conqueror, spontaneously fulfilling the two purposes, may I work for sentient beings as long as space remains.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we will finish up this session with a short mandala offering and then dedication prayers. Long. No, I didn't. You did make preparation. No. Geshe is objecting that. All right, so Geshe said no need for long, so we'll do the short. I'm just going to barge in and do the short. And then we'll do some dedication prayers and take a lunch. Apologies for that, I didn't see the preparation. All right. Sa shi po ki jo shi me to tam ri ra ling shi ni de pa di sang ye shindu mi te o i roku nam da shin la chu pa shui dang guru ratna mandala gami atayami. But the supreme jewel bodhicitta that is not arisen, arise and grow, and may that which is arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of the Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. While powerful Chinrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. Several of the Snowland teachings on transmigratory beings makes extremely clear the path of the unification of emptiness and compassion. To Lotus Holy Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You uphold the Bureau's moral way, who says in the manifold bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Majana's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplished magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels. Several of myself and others, your disciples, please live long.